She walked into the most expensive store in the city. The cashier took one look at her hijab, and did something no one expected. My name is Fatima. And what happened to me that afternoon in one of Manhattan's most prestigious luxury boutiques, I still think about it every single day. I had saved for months. Not for something extravagant. Just a small gift. A token for my daughter's graduation. Something meaningful. Something from a place that felt special. I remember standing outside the glass doors, smoothing down my dark navy abaya, adjusting my headscarf just slightly. I took a breath. I walked in. The store smelled like cedar and jasmine. Tall ceilings. Marble floors that reflected the chandeliers above. A few well-dressed customers floated through the aisles like they owned the place. And there, behind the gleaming counter, was the cashier. Young. Polished. And in that first instant, her eyes met mine. She looked at my hijab. Then she did something I was not prepared for at all. I am a first-generation American. My parents came to this country from Morocco in 1987 with 2 suitcases, a prayer mat, and an unshakable belief that hard work and dignity would see them through. My father worked 14-hour shifts at a bakery in Brooklyn for 11 years before he could afford to open his own shop. My mother raised 4 children, ran the household, volunteered at the local mosque, and somehow still found time to make us feel like the luckiest children on earth. I grew up wearing hijab. Not because I was forced to. Because I chose it. When I was 17, I made that decision myself, quietly, after far prayer one morning in late November. My mother cried when she saw me come downstairs that day. Not from sadness. From pride. I became a nurse. I worked for 22 years in the cardiology ward at Bellevue Hospital. I have held the hands of dying men. I have helped bring new lives into this world. I have worked beside people of every faith, every background, every color, and not once in 2 decades, did my hijab interfere with the quality of my care. But the world outside the hospital, that was sometimes a different story. The store associate nearest to the entrance, a tall young man in a tailored black suit, glanced up when I walked in. He gave me the briefest nod. The kind of nod that isn't quite welcoming but isn't hostile either. The kind that says, I see you, I'm watching, don't touch anything expensive. I have experienced that nod before. Most Muslim women who wear hijab in Western cities have. You develop a kind of sixth sense for it. You learn to read a room in seconds. The slight stiffening of shoulders. The subtle narrowing of eyes. The way a smile becomes careful. I moved slowly through the store. I was looking for the jewelry section. Not diamonds. Just a simple silver bracelet, the kind that comes in a velvet box and feels meaningful without being ostentatious. My daughter, Layla, had just finished medical school. 26 years old. Top of her class at Columbia. I wanted her to have something she could wear every day and remember, your mother believed in you before anyone else did. I found the jewelry counter. And there she was. Sarah. She had high cheekbones and perfectly applied makeup and the kind of effortless poise that comes from years of being told you are exactly the right kind of person for this job. She looked at me. She looked at my hijab. And then she did it. She came around from behind the counter. She walked directly toward me. And she said, in a voice that was low and genuine and slightly uncertain, she said, "Excuse me. I'm sorry to approach you like this. But I need to ask you something." I prepared myself. In that fraction of a second, I ran through the scenarios. She's going to ask me to leave. She's going to call security under the pretense of some policy I've never heard of. She said, "Your scarf. The way you've wrapped it. My grandmother used to wrap hers exactly like that." I stared at her. She continued, her voice softer now, "She was from Lebanon. She passed away 3 years ago." I haven't seen anyone wrap a hijab that way since. I'm sorry, I know this is completely unprofessional. I had to say something. There was nothing performative about it. No audience. No cameras. Just a young woman who saw something in a headscarf that reminded her of someone she loved and missed terribly. And she chose, in the middle of her workday, to say so. I did not expect to cry in a luxury store that afternoon. But I did. Her name was Maryam. Sarah's grandmother. She had come to the United States from Beirut in 1972, part of a wave of Lebanese immigrants who arrived with education, ambition, and profound cultural pride. She had been a mathematics teacher back home. Here she became a seamstress, then a shop owner, then a woman of considerable standing in her community. She wore hijab every single day of her life in America. Without apology. Without exception. In the years after September 2001, when wearing a headscarf in public became, for some women, an act of extraordinary courage, Maryam simply continued. As she always had. Sarah had grown up in her grandmother's house on weekends. She used to sit on the edge of the bed and watch Maryam wrap her scarf each morning. The same deliberate movements. The same quiet prayer murmured under her breath. The same final adjustment, 2 fingers smoothing the fabric at the temple. That is what Sarah had seen when she looked at me. 2 fingers. Smoothing the fabric at my temple. She used to say, Sarah told me, her voice barely above a whisper, that the hijab wasn't a covering. It was a conversation with God. Something private that she carried into every room. I thought about my own mother saying almost exactly the same thing when I was 17 years old. We stood there for nearly 20 minutes. In the middle of a luxury store. 2 women who had no reason to know each other, finding, in the most unexpected place, a thread of something shared. I told Sarah about my mother. About growing up in Brooklyn. About the way my mother would sit with me after Isha prayer and tell me that every difficulty in this life had a wisdom behind it that we couldn't always see yet. Sarah told me about her grandmother's final years. How Maryam had developed dementia in her late 80s and had begun to forget almost everything, her children's names, the streets she had walked for decades, the English she had spent a lifetime learning. But she never forgot how to wrap her hijab. Every morning, without prompting, she would reach for her scarf and wrap it with the same deliberate grace she had always had. The nurses told us that memory lives in the body differently than it lives in the mind, Sarah said. That some things are too deep to forget. I thought about how faith is like that. How the body knows certain prayers before the mind has fully woken up. How the hands know which direction to raise in dua even in the darkest moments. Do you still practice? I asked her gently. She was quiet for a moment. I don't know what I am anymore, she said honestly. But I think about her every day. That's a kind of prayer, I said. She looked at me. And for the first time, she smiled. A real one. Eventually we made our way back to the jewelry counter. The silver bracelet I had come in for was still there on the velvet display. Sarah lifted the case and held it up to the light. It's beautiful, she said. Your daughter is going to love it. She spent several minutes with both bracelet styles, one with a delicate engraved pattern, one perfectly plain, holding each up, tilting them to catch the light, asking me questions about Layla that no sales associate had ever asked before. What does she love? What kind of doctor is she becoming? Is she more drawn to simplicity or to beauty that requires a second look? We chose the engraved one together. As Sarah was wrapping the bracelet in tissue paper and placing it in the velvet box, she paused. She reached beneath the counter and produced a small card, the kind the store provides for gift messages. Would you like to write something? She asked. I took the pen. I sat with it for a moment. And I wrote. To Layla. From your mother, who always knew. With love that has no beginning and no end. Alhamdulillah. Sarah read it as I wrote. When I finished, she nodded slowly. She's going to keep that card forever, Sarah said quietly. I believe she was right. Walking out of that store, I held the velvet box in both hands like it weighed far more than it did. I thought about what had just happened. Not the purchase. The conversation. The 20 minutes. The grandmother named Miriam. The 2 fingers at the temple. I thought about how many times I had braced myself walking into a room, a store, a meeting, a waiting room, and felt that familiar calculation begin. How will they see me? What assumptions are already being made? How much of my energy today will go toward simply existing without justifying myself? And I thought about how wrong I had been, in those first seconds inside that store. Not always wrong. There are real moments of prejudice. Real encounters that leave you hollow. I do not want to pretend otherwise. But in that store, on that afternoon, I had been wrong. Sarah had not been looking at my hijab with suspicion. She had been looking at it with grief. With love. With the particular ache of someone who has lost a piece of home and suddenly, unexpectedly, found it again. The Quran says, "And he found you lost and guided you." I have always understood that verse to be about faith itself, about the journey toward God. But standing on the sidewalk outside that store, I understood something else. Sometimes guidance comes wearing a name badge. Sometimes the reminder arrives in the least likely place. Sometimes Allah shows you His mercy through the eyes of a stranger who turns out not to be a stranger at all. 3 days later, at my kitchen table, surrounded by her medical school friends and her aunts and her proud, exhausted, overjoyed grandmother, my daughter Layla opened the box. She lifted the bracelet out slowly. Held it up. The engraved pattern caught the kitchen light and threw tiny reflections across the ceiling. Everyone in the room went quiet. Then she found the card. She read it once. Then she read it again. Her friends watched her face change, that particular shift that happens when a person reads something that is meant for them alone. She looked up at me across the table. "Mama," she said. Just that one word. I nodded. Because there are moments that language is too slow for. Moments that only the eyes can hold. She put the bracelet on right there at the table. It has not come off since. But what I have not told you, what I saved for this moment, is that when I told Layla the story of how I bought it, and who helped me choose it, and what Sarah said about her grandmother, my daughter was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. "Mama. That woman, Sarah, she met you, and you reminded her of something sacred. That is not an accident. That is Allah. That is always Allah. I am a nurse. I believe in science. I believe in evidence. And I believe, with every cell of my body, that my daughter was exactly right. I want to tell you why I am sharing this story. Not because it has a perfect ending. Not because every encounter between a Muslim woman and the world around her ends in unexpected grace. Many do not. But I am sharing it because of what it reminded me. Because at 61 years old, after decades of bracing myself, of calculating, of wondering whether the room I was walking into would see me or just my hijab, I needed to be reminded of this. Humanity has a way of surprising you. And faith has a way of traveling between people without anyone planning it. A grandmother named Miriam wrapped her hijab the same way every morning for 50 years. She is gone now. But the memory of those 2 fingers, smoothing the fabric at the temple, traveled from a bedroom in Michigan to a luxury store in Manhattan and landed, of all places, on me. A stranger. A Muslim woman who had saved up for a gift for her daughter. And in that landing, something was kept alive that could have been lost. This is what we carry when we carry faith. Not just our own prayers. Not just our own memories. We carry the prayers and memories of everyone who came before us, every grandmother, every mother, Every woman who wrapped her hijab in the dark before far and stepped out into a world that did not always understand her, but kept going anyway. So the next time you adjust your hijab, the next time you smooth the fabric at your temple, remember, you are not alone in that gesture. You never were. And you never will be. Alhamdulillah.